пошел нахуй.
Policy things, but first I just wanted to go back to what you said about personnel. Right before the election in a rally, the president suggested that he might fire Dr. Fauci after the vote had happened. And so I was wondering if you could comment on what Dr. Fauci's status is, and if you have any.
Yeah, I've heard no discussions about Dr. Fauci still hard at work on the task force.
And then there were two things that the president mentioned as policy goals that would happen before the election that we haven't seen any sort of obvious progress on, so I wanted to check in on those. The first is the $200 Medicare prescription drug card that was supposed to happen before the election. It seems to have sort of vanished, so I was wondering if you could give an update on that.
Let me follow up with the chief of staff on that. I haven't heard any current discussions about it, but I will follow up.
And then he had also promised an immigration order, an executive order on immigration that would protect dreamers. Again, he promised that before the election. Do you have any of
He put forth many different immigration packages on HB1 visas and others to protect American workers. I'll circle back, but there were many iterations of immigration news prior to the election.
Is that work progressing at this point, or have you sort of thrown in the towel?
I think right now the focus is making sure that there is stimulus relief for Americans who are hurting right now. So that is the current active policy priority that we are working on moment by moment, along with COVID. Yes.
Clearly, as demonstrated by the large red ribbon out here in the White House, yesterday was World AIDS Day. The president issued his proclamation yesterday, but consistent with his previous three proclamations, omitted any reference to LGBTQ people, even though they bear the brunt of HIV/AIDS. The president included a reference to racial and ethnic minorities, so why not LGBTQ people?
The president honored World AIDS Day yesterday in a way that no president has before, with the red ribbon there. And I think that he commemorated the day as he should have.
That doesn't explain why there's no reference to LGBTQ people in the proclamation.
Charlotte, go ahead.
Thanks, Riley. I wanted to ask about Section 230. Is President Trump willing to allow a government shutdown over that in the National Defense Bill?
The president has made clear the importance of 230, and I would point you to his tweet about how that pertains to the NDAA. One thing I would say, when you look at 230, just to explain for the American public exactly what that is, it's essentially a shield that is given to social media networks because they claim to be the public square. But in the case of Twitter, Twitter has become a publisher, choosing to fact check certain content. And when you're a publisher, there are certain responsibilities with that. You should not be immune from liability. And when you look at what Twitter has done, on the Ayatollah Khomeini, we were just looking at his Twitter account before coming out here, and just a few weeks ago, the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran tweeted, quote, "Why is it a crime to raise doubts about the Holocaust?" Something not worthy of a flag by Twitter, which is despicable when you think about it. Also, the Ayatollah has tweeted that Israel is a deadly cancerous growth that should be uprooted and destroyed, something that Twitter did not deem worthy of flagging or blocking in its entirety, and in fact, Twitter executives defended that move in front of the Knesset. This is a very important issue, one that there's even bipartisan agreement that something needs to be done. So the president will be unashamed in fighting against that kind of vitriol that we see and very hateful language that Twitter is publishing.
Thank you, Kaylee. Just one more question about Section 230. The Democratic chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, he put out a statement essentially saying that these two things are not related, Section 230 and something as big and important for our national security as the NDAA. So I just want to be clear here, is President Trump seriously considering and talking about vetoing the NDAA over Section 230?
Yes, the president is serious about it, and I noted, when you have other world leaders that are making calls for genocide and Twitter not finding that worthy of flagging or blocking. Beyond that, you look at China, who's putting out disinformation. China tweeted out, I believe it was 6 days ago, I think it was November 25th, that COVID-19 did not originate in Wuhan, something that was not deemed worthy of flagging by Twitter. There are real grave concerns here, and the president stands by that. And it also is worth noting that the president will always defend our military, ensure that we get adequate defense funding, as he's gotten $2.9 trillion so far, but he is going to put the pressure on Congress to step up on this.
And one more question about Attorney General Bill Barr's comments. I believe you said that you're not sure if President Trump and the Attorney General have spoken since he made those comments, was that right?
Yes, I'm not sure if they've spoken.
But can you at least tell me, was President Trump upset when he heard the Attorney General say that he has not seen or the DOJ has not uncovered evidence of widespread voter fraud enough to overturn the outcome of the election?
I haven't spoken with the president specifically about AG Barr or that comment. And I would also just point everyone to the revised, or the supplemental, I should say, not revised, comment that was put out by AG Barr in the wake of media reporting that seemed to misconstrue his statement. He said that some media outlets have, not he, I should say the DOJ spokesperson, some media outlets have incorrectly reported that the department has concluded its investigation of election fraud and announced an affirmative finding of no fraud, and that is not what AP reported nor what the AG stated. A lot of the media didn't read beyond that one comment, the civil part versus the criminal part.
Well, I think maybe the discrepancy is, you have members of the Trump campaign coming forward and saying that there is hard evidence of widespread voter fraud enough to overturn the outcome of the election, and then you have the nation's top law enforcement officer, the Attorney General, saying if there is, he hasn't seen it.
Well, the Attorney General was speaking to what has come before his desk, and again, I point you to the campaign for specific questions on this, but I would just say generally they are pursuing civil litigation, which in fact the Attorney General explicitly said some of this is meant more for civil litigation, which is what the campaign is currently pursuing. Kevin?
Haley, is the president seriously considering skipping the inauguration?
I'll leave that to the president to make his announcement. He tweeted something to the effect of he knows what his decision is and he'll make his decision.
What rationale could he possibly have for skipping?
I'm not going to speculate on the president's decision. I'll leave that to him to announce it.
Just one follow-up. There was a report yesterday on federal officials investigating a potential bribe for pardon scheme. Has anybody at the White House been questioned by federal law enforcement officials regarding potential bribes for a pardon?
No, and in fact, a DOJ official said yesterday that no government official was or is currently a subject or target of the investigation disclosed in this filing. Yeah. Andrea?
Yeah. So thanks for my question. I wanted to ask about FBI Director Wray. Though it looks like President-elect Biden wants to keep him in the job, does that change the president's perspective on FBI Director Wray, and does he retain full confidence in him? And I have just a quick follow-up.
Yeah, he's made no assessments, and at least in my presence, about that, and if we have any personnel announcements, we'll let you know.
Okay, great. Can I just follow up on the vaccine issue? You said 40 million doses. I recall the president saying, and perhaps even you saying, that you were looking for 100 million doses by the end of the year. That 40 million is quite a bit short. So can you just clarify that number?
So there are currently 6 vaccines that we have identified as vaccines that we were hopeful would come to fruition, and with several of those, if not each of them, I can follow up with you on the exact number. We have manufacturing contracts. We have manufactured doses with several of these, but they have to come to completion. So with each new vaccine that comes, along with that will come millions and millions of doses that have already been manufactured in time. But currently, of the 4 vaccines in phase 3 clinical trial, Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Janssen, 2 of those have gotten to the point of applying for an EUA. So really, it's incumbent on the manufacturer and those going through the phase 3 clinical trial to get that data to us, and then it's manufactured and ready to go. So the moment someone else gets to a 94% effectiveness rate or whatever the barometer is, we will have those doses. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. I have just two quick questions, Michael. Georgia officials have said election workers there are facing threats because of the president's false claims about winning the state and his rhetoric about the election. Does the president condemn threats against election workers, or does he take any responsibility for those threats?
We condemn any threats against anyone. There's no place for violence. What I will say, though, too, is that the president's lawyers, they were doxxed by a left organization. Their private information put out, so we're seeing that happen to people on both sides of the argument, and there's no place for that ever anywhere.
And then just real quick, the CDC director today said that the next few months could be among the worst public health months in American history. I wonder, does the White House, is it setting a good example for the public for the White House to be holding in-person holiday parties at a time when the CDC and other organizations are asking Americans to forego those kinds of celebrations for their own safety?
Yeah, so if you can loot businesses, burn down buildings, engage in protest, you can also go to a Christmas party. You can celebrate the holiday of Christmas, and you can do it responsibly, which is why the East Wing has noted that they'll have a smaller guest list, masks are going to be available, social distancing is going to be encouraged, hand sanitizing stations, among other measures. But we will engage in the celebration of Christmas, and there will be a Hanukkah celebration as well. Yes. Yes. Meredith.
Thanks. Does President Trump, has he had any kind of conversations with allies on Capitol Hill about challenging Joe Biden's electoral college votes with Congress? We saw one of his allies today said he plans to do that. Is that a conversation that the president's had at all?
Not that I'm aware of. Enos?
Oh, yeah. The White House Coronavirus Task Force is privately telling governors that Americans under the age of 40 who gathered with people outside their households at Thanksgiving are dangerous to others and should isolate immediately. Why is the White House not publicly sharing that same information with Americans?
You said that was in a what document?
The White House Coronavirus Task Force is privately telling governors
that those at Thanksgiving celebrations.
that Americans under
there's
40, yeah.
There's CDC guidance out there as to when you should and should not isolate, so I would point you to that. That's all been publicly available since the beginning of all of this. Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. So if some version of the defense authorization makes it to the president's desk with language that terminates Section 230, will he sign it into law, even if there's language in there that renames bases bearing Confederate, names or named after Confederate officials?
Yeah, he's said before he's very much against the Warren Amendment, and public polling is with him on that. How that intersects with the 230 tweet, I will have to follow up with him about. I don't know if that position has changed, given what he tweeted recently, but I will follow up on that.
And then on China,
Yes.
Joe Biden told the Times that he doesn't want to roll back the China tariffs or the phase one trade deal. Do you know if the president plans on reaching out to Mr. Biden to talk about, China trade, since it's been such a hot policy issue, or any other policy really, before January 20th?
I'm not aware of any plans of that at the moment, but if I do, I'll let you know. Yeah. Meredith.
You gave some examples of, lawmakers who've been talking about COVID, but I am curious, where has President Trump been in offering public leadership on this topic of the coronavirus, especially as we've seen cases surge? We haven't seen the president make any sort of public comments or even tweets about this surge in cases. So I'm curious what sort of examples you have.
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, he's created the greatest testing system in the world. He gave a press conference about 2 weeks ago, I believe, on the vaccine, which he has done at warp speed because he's torn down bureaucratic barriers. He's been hard at work. He's done, I don't know how many coronavirus task force briefings from this podium, but the work he's done speaks for itself. The fact that now the case fatality rate in this country is 2%, and 6% in April, and what that means is it's a testament to our therapeutics. Another thing that happened recently, in fact, mid-November, got almost no attention, but it's again a testament to the president, is The two new therapeutics, they are renditions of, one is a monoclonal antibody, another one is a Regeneron therapeutic, and these two therapeutics are given to people with mild to moderate COVID symptoms that are at high risk for severe COVID or hospitalization. So the fact that we've got to the point where we now have therapeutics we can give you in advance to try to prevent you from going to a hospital, and we've sent out 169,000 vials of one and 36,000 vials of another just in a few weeks. He's hard at work at this with the task force behind the scenes. And when we talk about his public leadership, just on COVID generally, I think it's a fitting time, given your question, to note Dr. Fauci now says that we should keep the schools open. He said that this Sunday. This is something the president has said for months. It caused me to go back to July and look at one of my briefing books from July 16th, 2020. And what I found in there
What's important is the student understood that in a very personal, internal way, and that's what you want. You want this kind of personal, internal understanding. So the repetition is important, but I think it's also the reason why you shouldn't minimize unless the student can do something right from the get-go, because unless the student has a sense of what it means to have a perfectly free rotation in this kind of larger, magnified way, it's not going to work well when you start to minimize. So what does minimization mean? Taubman once said that rotation is really the internal adjustment of the forearm in the direction of motion. That means when you're playing to the right, the forearm adjusts internally to the right. When you're playing to the left, forearm adjusts internally to the left. We don't see these internal adjustments, but we can feel the result of them. So when we're looking at the process of minimization, we're looking to internalize the feelings that one has gained through this process of rotational training. Now, the minimization is more than about just making the rotation smaller. And I feel like this is a place where people stumble needlessly. That the larger rotational motions you see, let me just demonstrate that for those of you that may be unclear about what I'm talking about. So if I'm using my forearm to put each finger down, then that is a large visible rotation. When we minimize that, it becomes something other than a small version of that. In other words, it's not just a small version of clicking from finger to finger. That's part of how you get there, but it is more than that. So if I'm stumble needless, smaller, and I feel the process of rotational training, the internal adjustments, but we can feel the result of them. So when we're looking at the process of minimization, we're looking to internalize the feelings that one has gained through this process of rotational training. Now, the minimization is more than about just making the rotation smaller. And I feel like this is a place where people stumble needlessly. That the larger rotational motions you see, let me just demonstrate that for those of you that may be unclear about what I'm talking about. So if I'm using my forearm to put each finger down, then that is a large visible rotation. When we minimize that, it becomes something other than a small version of that. In other words, it's not just a small version of clicking from finger to finger. That's part of it's not just that, it becomes something other than a small version of that. In other words, it's not just a small version of clicking from finger to finger. That's part of how you get there, but it is more than that.
So this is something actually to keep in mind, that we work so hard on connecting the forearm to the hand, because there's usually no forearm, there's a piece of wood there that doesn't give. So we work very, very hard, and we leave the fingers out of it for a little bit. That's the process with people who come from playing fingers alone, you know, all the isolated fingers. So sometimes it goes, and it goes up to a certain point, and then you have to awaken the fingers a little bit. Sometimes not, because when you're turning, and everything is turning together, very often it just kind of brings the finger motion with it, but sometimes it doesn't. I didn't do it with him, with other fingers. I'm very careful to go, and we all are, you know, when we're in this process, to understand that when we introduce something, it can always go a little bit too much. So I just work with him. The other fingers seem to be... Okay, but the thumb was stiff. So now that the forearm is moving much better, I introduce, as you turn, to move a little bit the thumb. Thumb moves from here, and of course it's connected all the way to the elbow, but the feeling of the thumb moving freed it up and also makes it easier to move across to get there, and then to play, you know, to play the thumb right up. So now that the forearm is moving much better, I introduce, as you turn, to move a little bit the thumb. Thumb moves from here, and of course it's connected all the way to the elbow, but the feeling of the thumb moving freed it up and also makes it easier to move across to get there, and then to play, you know, to play the thumb right after the crossing.
Il faisait nuit noire et nous étions allés nous promener.
Quel est le meilleur moyen de rajouter un zéro à ton chiffre d'affaires à une vitesse record? Je te propose de bénéficier.
Hi, in this lesson we'll learn an easy method to play notes. But for a start, we'll not think about scales and theory at all. Instead, we'll start out being very practical and we'll learn to play right away. Before we get into it, let me demonstrate the jazzy sound we can make when mastering this lesson. Right now I switch between different melodic minor modes, and in that way I add different nice flavors to our C bass note. The really great thing is that I use quite a simple method to do all this. Very soon I'll show you that method. My name is Oliver Prehn, by the way, and this is a new jazz lesson.
Feel 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, by the way, these are swung eighth notes. Don't play them straight. 1 and 2 and 3. No, it's swung. 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, once you got that, you can add that left hand in, and here's how it comes together. And then we take it down. I'm using some simple chord shells in my left hand. You can also use the more advanced voicing. Okay, really, really nice. may have heard me do a little slide there. We're going to talk about slides here in a minute, but you want to be really, really comfortable with this eighth note scale. Once you can do up and down the piano, then try to make up some little lines using eighth notes. Here's how I might improvise over this. Notice the lines have a start and an end point. This is really, really important as you create lines. If you guys want to do a deeper dive of this topic, by the way, we have the Jazz Ballad Soloing Challenge at Piano with Johnny. I believe this is an hour to 2 hour long course where we do a much deeper dive on how to create lines. But I want to teach you exercise number 2. This is a triplet.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. So, the topic for today is the mysterious squiggly line that you might sometimes come across in your music. It sits above your notes, it might be with the letters TR and then a squiggle, and you're kind of like that actually. They're there too, and you can probably get sheet music. Usually, this means there's like a tiny little music staff written above the actual music staff with the like C sharp to C.
Всем привет, это Денис Шевченко из Первого Лада. Сейчас
When you give a gift you make yourself, it can be anything. Custom and personalized and the perfect fit.
But I wonder how many of you return to your slide in Pianist Magazine issue 78. Now, I think we all know the value of slow practicing. We appreciate that we need to practice slowly when we're starting to learn a piece because we simply can't play it at speed.
Не трогай, это на Новый год. Хотя уже можно. Skillbox приготовил для вас бесплатно.
Exercise. Here's the sound of triplets. Okay, they really move a lot more, and this is a really important note value to have in your playing. Okay, how do you practice triplets? You're going to play 3 notes per beat up the piano using the gospel scale or the major blues scale. Here's the feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. You're going to do a hold there and bring it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. Those are triplets. Okay, 3 notes per beat. Once you have that down, add the left hand. Here's how you'd play it with the more beginner left hand. We'll go slow. Okay, and down. Okay, notice I throw that little quick 5-1 in. Okay, that quick 5-1 lines up with the 3rd triplet on every beat. Next, I want you to try improvising with triplets, okay? So again, you want to create some nice simple lines. Remember, a line has a start and an end point. So you want to leave a little gap between your lines. This is how this one would sound. Triplet, triplet, triplet. Okay? And you can mix this with your 8th notes. Guys, I want to teach you the final exercise. This is an exercise that uses slides. Okay? Now, when I play this style, I love to slide notes. Okay? And how do you practice slides? Well, this is a slide scale exercise. What we're going to do is practice slides up the piano and then down the piano. Okay? Here's how it goes. Basically, on your gospel scale, okay, you're going to slide the E. I like to use 1 finger for my slide. And then you can slide the A. Okay? And you can just play these up the piano, E and A. Okay? Now, what you want to do is play the scale using slides up the piano. And here's how I do it. I slide the E with 2. Thumb on the G, slide the A with 2, thumb on the C, slide the E with 2, thumb on the G, and you play this all the way up. With a hold on E, and then we bring it down. Makes sense? Now you can use other fingering. You don't have to use this fingering. Sometimes I'll go 2, 3, 2, 3. That's fine, okay? It's just a bigger jump, okay? So you can use whatever fingering feels more comfortable to you, and then once you have that down, go ahead and play it with the left hand. Here's how it would sound. Okay, and then you can go ahead and play with the backing track, and this time try improvising with it. Okay, here we go. 2, here we go. Alright guys, this concludes this week's quick tip, and if you enjoyed this lesson, I want to encourage you to check out pianowithjohnny.com. We have over 600 step-by-step lessons in cocktail jazz, Latin jazz, jazz swing, improvisation, blues, a ton of other styles, theory, technique. Also check out the Piano with Johnny membership. This gives you unlimited access to our entire course library, plus you get to be part of our live monthly events, including our live workshop lessons, our live Q&As, where you can ask me your questions, our student assessments where you can send me a video of your playing and I'll give you personalized feedback. We do weekly challenges for our members and we have an amazing community. So go check out pianowithjohnny.com and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.
Как это так? 97 500. Что такое? Не могут.